why Alphacore is a no-go. The first thing, the biggest thing, and there's actually not a lot to talk about, to be honest. The first thing is that you can see this looks like a superhero book. And the 3 core characters, but especially this guy right here. I'm going to use strong language. They're a-holes, especially the main guy. He is a jerk. He's a jerk to the villain. He's a jerk to the police force. And obviously there's supposed to be a conflict between the police force and these super beings called the Excepts, who are working within the bounds of the police force. They're not supposed to, well, basically, like, he comes in, he does save a life, which is good, but the police weren't happy about it, which, like, you know, you want to root for the hero who saves the person's life. So it's like, yeah, come on, police, back off, you know? He saved the day. It doesn't matter if it wasn't an accept situation. He saved the day, but he's kind of a jerk about it when he refutes it. He's for someone who's been a war hero or something like that, he has a past. Obviously, he has experience fighting in a war. He doesn't really submit to authority. He's, at the very least, he's not respectful of authority. And that kind of cued me in thinking, well, maybe that's why the police force has a gripe with you and your ilk, you and your kind, because you guys do have special abilities. You guys are uber powerful, and you're not being respectful to boundaries. Now, saving a life, that needs to come first. I would agree with any hero saying, listen, we got to save a life first. But when you're a jerk about it, then I think I'm like, yeah, there is cause for concern. For if you're a punk, if you're kind of a bully and you're a super powered person, it's like people are going to be on edge. They're gonna give you a wide berth saying, hey, back off. Like let us do our own thing. That's where the conflict is there. So maybe that's why Chuck Dixon wrote it to be that. But it's like, you can still have prejudice against these Excepts without the people being jerks. Like, you have super powered bullies, pretty much. They're not bullies, but they're kind of antagonistic in their language. So he's a jerk to the police force. He's a jerk to his own staff. Like, he's kind of just like a smart aleck. There was some dialogue that was absolutely cringe. Some dialogue, some name calling that was something I hadn't heard since the early 90s. Like, you don't call anyone this. No one has heard this word, this term in, like, 20 or 30 years unless they've watched a movie out of that period. No one's seen or heard that term. But anyway, Brian Solari is directly supposed to be an analog to Superman, and he's a very indecent human being. But more than that, he's not only a jerk, he's an absolute moron. So they're doing this investigation, and they defeat these Except enemies to get to this item that's held in the vault, because apparently some big baddies are really trying to, witness the demise of the police force. And so they have this Grand Master. There are gonna be spoilers, okay? There are gonna be spoilers. The lady villain, she has this Grand Master plan, like, I want to do away with the police force. I want chaos or whatever. I don't know what her motives are, but she just wants to destroy the police headquarters or whatever. Now, the way she goes about doing that is pretty dumb, but fear not. She gets away with it because of the asinine character that is Brian Solari. So we'll talk about Brian Solari. Now, I'm a little sleepy, so this rant might go off on tangents. Basically, they stopped these 2 bad guys that had something stored in a bank vault, and it's this thumb drive. It's like, oh, this, like, they're causing all this commotion and damage for this little, thumb drive. And so Brian and some other staff, they take the thumb drive, and they're back on their, hovering aerial base or whatever. I'll call it aerial base. And people are saying, what is this little thumb drive or whatever? And Brian Solari says, I don't know, but it's something big, big enough to kill, big enough to fight over, and stuff like that. And just a few pages down, he demands the tech lady. He's like, "What is this?" And she's like, "I don't know, and I don't feel good about decrypting it or investigating it because I have just a really bad feeling about this." And then basically, he takes the drive from her. Someone else is calling, "Hey, Brian, what's going on?" And he takes it. I thought it was a doppelganger for a second because he's so stupid. He takes the drive, he sticks it in the hardware of the whole aerial base or whatever, and everything goes haywire, like they've been hijacked. He's like, "You got to take chances, man. You got to just see what's happening. You know, those who risk it win," or something. He says something stupid like those. It's in there somewhere. I'm not going to even. Those who take chances, those people win, and stuff like that. And then the whole aerial base has been hijacked, and they're going straight down. They're about to plummet through. They're plummeting through the air, and then the girl, the tech girl, she's hurt from the explosion because the drive causes chaos, and then she's electrocuted. Brian doesn't do anything about it. Like another staff helps her. She's lying there, but she's breathing and stuff like that. And then Brian's like, "What's going on, Ray?" The other tech guy. He's like, "I don't know." He's telling Ray, I guess the pilot or whatever too. He's like a tech pilot. He's like, it's like, "Ray, stop this. I'm trying." It's like, "Bro, you stop it. Like you did this. You caused this whole thing. You thought it was going to be a big deal. A few pages ago, you said like this drive has something that people would kill over this, and then what is it?" And then like, "Oh, let's just stick it in the hardware and see what happens. We have good antivirus systems and stuff like that." So he's a complete moron. He's a complete doofus. And the whole structure comes pummeling through the sky, or plummeting. It's plummeting through the sky. Now, something happens where it is then controlled. Like they stop falling, the aerial base stops falling, but they're controlled to a very specific destination. And I'm just going to I'm going to show you the dialogue. Let's see, because I can't justify my anger without actually just saying the words. Yeah. So this guy. Okay. So what's really offensive is this. So Brian here, if you could see him, he's ripping out his police uniform just like Superman would his business uniform to become Superman. So it's like that direct analog that he's Superman. And he says, "Oh," so Ray, the tech pilot guy, says, "We're crashing." And then Brian says, "Well, stop it." And then Ray says, "I'm trying." and and then going further, guys, I'm sorry, I have to say all this. So Ray finally goes out with his, or not Ray, Brian goes out with his cape and stuff like that. And what does he say? He says, "You need to pull up. We're heading for downtown." And then Ray screams in the intercom saying, "I keep trying to tell you, Brian, we're not doing this." "So who is, Ray?" As if that's important in the moment. "Whoever set us up with that drive." That's the whole page. That's both pages. So it's like, I don't know. It's maybe I'm not making sense for realizing how asinine is this, but basically they had a mysterious drive from a vault that two except enemies were trying to protect or fight over or whatever. They obtain the thumb drive. Everyone thinks it's dangerous, even Ray or even Brian. But then Brian's like, "Well, let's see what. Oh, come on, how bad can it be?" That's what he said. "How bad can this be?" And then the villainess, she's all laughing and saying this on the phone. So she's driving, or at least some apparatus that she's controlling is driving the aerial base straight to the police headquarters, so there could be casualties and collateral damage. So they try to stop it. It's not working, and it's a back and forth between Brian and the tech. It's like, "Oh, watch out, watch the road, Ray." And he's like, and he says this, I'm not the one driving, butthead." And then, so they have to save people, which is good. I'm glad the heroes are saving people. Brian and Braxwell are the ones who can fly, and they're saving families. That's all good and stuff. And then one person, and I can talk about him a little bit later. He actually ends up at least fortify something to stop not stop the imminent crash, but at least absolve the impact of the crash. But he then dies, and then everyone is sad. And I'm like, I don't feel for your sadness. Like this was Brian's doing. Like he's an absolute buffoon and a jerk, and he should lament over the fact that he caused someone to die over his actions. And then at the end, the villainess and her cohort or whatever, because it's like these two affluent characters who are probably accepts because they have like powers coming out of their eyes and their hands and stuff like that. They try to go on vacation. And I'll talk about Ingrid a little bit and Braxwell. Ingrid, out of the three, had the most heart. She had the most like feeling and understanding between people. But then she does something at the very end that was absolutely stupid. Basically, she stops the two villains who the reader knows are behind this, but still the investigation, they're not completely sure that it's them behind the whole trying to destroy the police force. But the heroes, they suspect it's those two, and they're going on a private jet to vacate somewhere on an island to feel better about themselves because they didn't cause casualties. They only caused physical damage. And then Ingrid, who's the woman, she's got these like weird cords that kind of glow. I mean, the look is cool. The design I think is cool. But you don't really know what those cords are yet. At least I don't as a reader. Apparently, so you can swing it like a lasso or whatever and like trip people and thwart people and stuff like that. Awesome. Perfect. But what they also can do, what these cords can also do is pretty much slice. It was either an engine. Spoilers. Yeah. Yeah. It's an engine of a private jet. See that thing hack off right there? So does she dial it down where it won't sever any limbs, but it can take off an engine of a private jet? And then she says, looks like your vacay has been delayed. Engine trouble. And then they all go like they strut out like, we did it. We thwarted the bad guys that we suspect to be bad or whatever like that. And I'm like, you just damaged millions of dollars worth of personal property. That's going to look great to the police force. So this whole conflict between these XFs and the police force is like, yeah, there should be conflict. There should be suspicion because these are super powerful beings who are acting like jerks. And then Braxwell, he's kind of the silent type. He's a man of few words. I think he does like that or something. But there's a police officer. He saves. And let's see if I can find it. Oh yeah, here. So he's like kicking butt and stuff like that. Yeah. All right, good. And then he has this kind of like pose, this dynamic pose. I'm looking up and stuff. The officer, the non-accept officer says, it's Braxwell, right? Thanks for the assist. And then he, without a word, he just flies off. And the officer says, well, take her easy. So he doesn't say you're welcome or no need to thank me, like heroes should do. They should have that kind of language. And then the guy who dies, I did say spoilers, right? Sorry if I spoiled things for you. But the guy who dies, he's actually a pretty likable character. He's this officer who has XF powers, and you only see some of his abilities with one finger to get through this door bolt. And he's with Ingrid, and she's kind of a little standoffish with him at first, but then she warms up to him and stuff. And she says, "Oh, you're an accept." And he says, "Yeah, it's just party tricks. I really don't have a lot of power." And she's like, "Well, just work at it. It's like a muscle." He's like, "Really?" And then not even if I don't know how much time has passed since that, and then the catastrophic event at the end, but probably not that long. But basically, little bolts come out of his index finger. And then she says, work at it. It's like a muscle. I'm like, okay, there's going to be development of some kind. Well, no. To stop the aerial base from crashing into the headquarters, he raises up so much energy to thwart the impact. And his body's exploding with a type of energy and electricity. And unfortunately, he dies from that. I'm like, Works like a muscle, huh? Maybe in the next issue, we'll see that he's been practicing, or maybe he hid the fact that he practiced. That I'm not gonna read the second issue, but it was like that's a Mary Sue moment. Like, oh yeah, work at it like a muscle. It's like, boom, I have ultimate power. So I was not a fan of Alphacore. High quality produced book. It feels good. The art, I will say, looks pretty decent. I'm not a complete fan of it. But those characters, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel that they were sad. They had this little banter. I'm like, why? I don't feel you guys laughing with each other because I just don't feel you. I don't know who you are. I really don't know what your motives are, really. Like okay, we know that Brian Solari wants to help people, and he's miffed that like the police force is putting a hard stop to his interference. Okay, good. That's a good conflict. But then they're trying to interfere and cross boundaries. And there's one point in the book where he says, you know, we had a saying in the army, it's best sometimes it's better to apologize than to ask for permission. It's like, okay, if you have a superpower, if you have a superhuman being who crosses boundaries, that's a threat. Because as far as we're concerned, he has no good heart. And he's a moron. And he's a buffoon. And he's very unlikable. Ingrid was fine until she pulled her stunt at the very end. Braxwell, he doesn't say thank you or you're welcome. I don't like him. Anyway, so I was really, really mad. I was really mad at that story. Like I just, every time I kept ruminating over it, it made my blood boil. So that's Alphacore. Reading Alphacore really revealed something to me about the online marketing space. I am very much like every once in a while Eric July with his commentary, but I will not be buying his stories. That doesn't change me viewing his commentary. That doesn't change me thinking differently of his personality. What does change, in my perspective, is something I think we should all be careful about, especially with YouTube personalities. And that is Eric July, his team of admin, his artistic team. I did watch the campaign videos, not all of them, like one or two. But they were long videos, like the campaigns talking about the process, the artistic process, and the sales and stuff like that. And everyone, and I mean everyone, they said, like from Chuck Dixon to the Saska sisters to Eric July to his admin team and stuff like that, they said this book blew them away. Well, Chuck Dixon was part of it, but the other people who like it blew their minds. It was the most amazing thing. You hated the villains. You wanted the villains dead. And I thought, okay, the villains were interesting. The big baddies who were behind it all, they were flat. Some people, I heard some reviews say like, oh my gosh, Lillian, the villainess, who sets up the whole thing, she's terrifying. I'm like, she's not terrifying. I'm not scared. I mean, I'm scared, more physically scared of I think his name was Galvin, the electro villain guy. Yeah, him. He's pretty scary. He nukes a guy in jail and stuff like that. He's terrifying. Like he's terrifying. The guy who becomes like a smoldering molten rock of fire. He's also terrifying. But they don't the heroes put him out pretty quickly. Even the non-Except heroes put him out pretty quickly. It's not that hard to defeat the actual super beings that are villains. But the other villains, they're just these affluent people bickering toward one another with among drinks and drinking and playing putt-putt golf and getting a massage and stuff like that. I'm not seeing anything that to make me afraid. They just complain. They're not brother and sister, but they kind of act like siblings, like these rich yuppie siblings. Like, yeah, like you're not doing the work you're supposed to. I don't like to get my hands dirty and stuff like that. I'm like, boring. The big baddies, they're boring. But everyone said, oh my gosh, the villains are amazing, and you want to see them die, and you really feel for the characters, and everyone across all the platforms, across all the departments, really made me interested in this book. And even more, especially more, was the trailer. That trailer that Rippa Studios set out really piqued my interest in the book. If you've seen the trailer, those characters in the trailer, in the animated trailer, are nothing like these characters. Absolutely nothing. This guy in the trailer, he looks good. He looks interesting. He looks noble. This guy is a jerk. In this book, he's a jerk. He's a jerk. Why is he a jerk? Makes me mad all over again. Anyway, but in the trailer, he's a completely different man. He almost has that Superman-esque feel, but just with a Southern drawl. And I didn't hear the Southern drawl in this guy's language in the comics. But that's what I want to talk about with the dark side of marketing online. I trusted. I have to say, I trusted to have a knockout of a book because of how well it was marketed on those platforms, on YouTube, on these YouTube videos, on these live streams. All these people who have been in the industry, all these people with editorial experience, all these people with HR experience, admin experience, all these people who seemed, and I'm not saying they're not pros, they probably are professionals. But the way they were talking about, I was like, okay, this is going to be something big. This is going to be something timeless. I'm going to see something stick with the Rippaverse, with Alphacore. And everyone was praising it to high heavens. And I believed it. Like, I'm admitting that to you. Like, I'm like, okay. Like, I wasn't like totally sold. Like, I'm still going to be objective. But the hype was real. And it's still real. I wasn't expecting my socks to be knocked off. I wasn't expecting that. But I was expecting A tier. I was expecting A+ quality from the advertising I was getting. And this is where I want to talk about the dark side of marketing. You can love these YouTube personalities. You can listen to them. You can agree with them. You can get excited for them. I wish Eric July all the best for his Rippaverse, even though I won't be reading those stories. You can be really excited and happy for the success of these artists who are trying to find, trying to create an alternative. But that doesn't guarantee, if you're an objective reader and viewer and listener and whatever, that does not guarantee that the art is going to be good. When I had heard from people saying, oh, his art is bad, or with Isom in particular, I thought it was more to get those clicks. I thought it was more rivals saying that, or people who just, or not even rivals like on an equal plane, but people who would just want more clicks. It is business to get views. It's a business to get your audience. And some people prefer to drum up the drama to get that attention, that kind of attention. But in a way, I thought Eric July, at least with his campaigns, I thought he was removed from that. I thought his art was removed from all that. And to an extent, I guess it is. Like, sometimes he doesn't talk about his rivals and stuff like that. Sometimes he does. And I'm like, bro, I just wish you would stop talking about it. But that's he can say what he wants on his channel. I'm not trying to dictate what he should or should not say on his channel. But I thought there was a very intense focus, a very different direction he was he was shooting for with his art, because he does approach it like a business. And because of that, I thought, I'm like, well, okay, then I think his art is going to be protected. I think anyone who wants to refute is only going to get the attention and drum up the views and drum up the drama. So maybe his art is separate from that. Maybe he's just doing his own thing and he's trying to be better. I still was not sure about Isom. I wasn't interested in Isom. I'm not interested in Yaira. Her design looks great. It looks really interesting. I'm not interested in her as a character. There was another character I was interested in until I read this book. Mike Barron, who's been in the industry, is writing this other character. And I'm sorry to say, I can't read it. I won't buy it because of the disappointment I had with Alphacore. Now, some people might argue saying, well, you know, this is the first issue of Alphacore. It could get better. You know, just give it time. Give it a few years and maybe issues will be great. Maybe Brian Solari will overcome his asinine weaknesses and stuff like that, and he won't be so much of a jerk. Maybe he'll grow out of that. And you'd be surprised, guys. There are so many people in the comments section of different videos. They fill in things they think the characters are that are not in the book. They'll actually try to make Brian Solari more palatable. They try to make, they actually, the words those commenters say about this character actually makes him look appealing, but it's not true. It's not what's in that art piece. So fans are already painting, fans who do like this Rippaverse are already painting good things about Brian Solari, good things about Ingrid, good things about Braxwell, and stuff like that's not true. That's not in the books. It's not. I judge the characters what I see in the art piece, not the interpretation of the fans. People will say, they'll make the argument saying, well, just give it time. This is the first issue of these characters. And I'm like, you know what? I could say something like that for some character like Isom, who is Eric July's character. I can see if Eric July really puts in the progress and hires honest editorial writers, editors, content editors, not just grammatical editors, content. I can see progress with someone like Eric July. But this is Chuck Dixon. That's the foundation of Alphacore. And it's the ricketiest foundation I've ever seen with characters, with new characters. And so I can't see it getting better. I can see it developing, but I can't see it getting better. And so the whole point of my little dark side of online marketing is you can like a personality, you can like a commentator. For me, I need to separate the commentator from his or her art. The art has to be standing on its own, regardless of how I feel about the commentary, regardless of how I feel about someone like Eric July. And I say this because he is such a strong personality. A lot of people love him. A lot of people do not like him. Wherever anyone is on the spectrum on that, it doesn't matter. He is a personality. He is a YouTuber. And I'm going to say a couple of things. Your attachment to a personality can actually obscure your perspective and your objective of what is or isn't good art. Because you like a personality, you want to support his art. You want to see him succeed. That's a wonderful thing. Like, you want to see the people you like succeed. Awesome. I get it. But that might obscure your objective lens saying, is this a good art piece? Is this a good story? Like, it's kind of hard to say, you know, that this story was a disappointment because it's written by Chuck Dixon, whose writing has been seen stellar in the industry. And he's a likable guy too. Like, Chuck Dixon is a really likable guy. I'll listen to his podcasts, you know. So he's a likable guy. And he's had his experience in the industry. But because of these facts, because Eric July is a personality who a lot of people gravitate toward, and because Chuck because Chuck Dixon is a legend in the industry, people might think, well, then of course it's going to be a good book. And that's the dark side. It's like, actually, no. To my surprise, I was very disappointed, and and it really makes me a lot more cautious. And even more so, guys, I, I've I've listened to people, other YouTube personalities, not as big as the Rippaverse or Young Rippa rather. But I have listened to other personalities that up until that point I trusted their views on writing and stories until they gave glowing praise to this book. And then I thought, well, I can still like you, but I can't trust you. You said everything that is opposite to what really is with that book. And so the gravitas, the attraction, the this global appeal, if you will, with something like the Rippaverse is right now very much intact with how much you like Eric July. It's the tenet is not in the quality of the fiction. The tenet is not in the comic book quality. It better get better. And if it does not get better, if other characters are the same, if the story falls flat, if the pacing is off, if the structure is off, if there is not a true work of art within this universe will only last as long as Eric July is on YouTube. Not even his website can save him, as impressive as his website is. And I say this as a cautionary thing. I say this, I'm going with this with a degree of caution, like, whoa, making good art, it might not get a lot of people coming your way. You might not have a huge audience even making really high exceptional art. People might come to you just because you're a very popular YouTuber, and that's the facts. Even if Eric July continues on this road for decades, if the stories are what they are, if the characters are what they are, the only thing holding his universe together is his personality on YouTube. If that goes, or if like somehow the infrastructure of the whole platform goes down, goes under, his own universe is not going to survive. And it's really sad. It's really sad. I was rooting for him. I still want him to have success, but it's got a really rocky foundation.